properties with Mark, so hopefully he can join us as and when he sorts out his issues. But thanks very much for joining us tonight. If you can just let me know that you can hear me, again, that'd be really useful. Just quick confirmation you can hear me. This is Graham. Okay, Marcus can hear me. Yeah, a few people can hear me. That's good news. Okay, excellent. Right, I'm gonna kick off. First of all, thanks for your patience tonight, and sorry about these technical issues. This is the first time that Mark and I have actually used this particular software, so apologies for that, and we'll get it sorted out for the next one. But thanks very much for joining us tonight. This is Graham Stewart, it's not Mark Lloyd, and tonight I'm going to teach you, or I'm going to talk to you about how you can make life-changing profits through land assembly. So the format of the webinar is, if you've got any questions at any point, please type them into the chat box. The more questions, the better. And I'll probably stop periodically throughout the presentation, check the questions and read out the questions that have been asked and try and answer them there and then. And please feel free to take some notes. I'm going to refer to a web page tonight, which you should definitely take a note of, and I think you should all read the report that's on that web page. So yeah, please feel free to take notes, and I think this has been recorded as well, so we might well be able to send it out to you afterwards. Okay, so just this is a kind of I guess an introduction to land assembly, but we're running a masterclass workshop through Property Mastery Academy on the 7th and 8th of April at the Park Inn Hotel in Heathrow. So speak to Mark or one of the team at Property Mastery Academy if you want to get signed up. The places are limited to, I think it's a maximum of 20 people. I'll let Mark do this at the end if you can join up. But basically, this is in conjunction with Property Mastery Academy, who were formed in 2012. And what makes Property Mastery Academy a bit different from any of the other property education companies out there is that the courses that they provide are unique. You won't see them anywhere else, and it tends to be content that is quite different to anything else you'll hear in the market. The owners are Mark and Jackie. I'm sure some of you have met Mark and Jackie, but they've had previous businesses as well, and they've now got a portfolio of cash flowing properties using the strategies that they teach. And Paul Merrick is also part of the team. I must confess, I don't know much about Paul, but he's obviously an entrepreneur and a property investor with a debt-free portfolio. Okay, so what you've come to listen to tonight basically is how can you earn 6 figures from one deal without buying any property? You can hopefully see on my screen an image of a building site, and this is a site. This is probably an image that most of you will have seen in your town or city. What tends to happen is you'll be driving down the same road on your way to work or on your way to pick up the children from school. And then one day you'll drive down the same road and you'll see a sign like this outside, and you'll think, wow, I wonder what's going on there. What's happened? And typically this is as a result of a land assembly. And the things to note on this sign is that always on these signs is that you'll always find the words "more land required." And that's because developers are desperate for land. So tonight I'm going to teach you, or to talk to you about how you can earn 6 figures from one deal. And when I'm talking about 6 figures, we're not just talking about 100k here. You'll see in some of the deals that I show you later on in the presentation, often it's 200,000, in excess of 200,000 you'll be earning from one deal. And the great thing about this strategy is that you don't have to buy the property. So you're acquiring these properties via what we call option agreements. And basically option agreements give you control of the site without actually having to own the properties. And what's more, the great thing about this strategy is that it's a win-win strategy. So we don't any of the owners of land or houses that we approach, we only approach them if we're confident that we can afford to pay at least 125% of the market value. So this is none of this BMV where there's a winner and a loser. This is very much a strategy where every party wins from it. And what's more, you're also helping the government to solve a big problem that they've got, which is that they're not building enough houses. Okay, so what I'm going to cover tonight is, just to give this a bit of context, is what is the current situation in the property industry? as investors, it's important that we understand what the situation is and then we adapt accordingly. So the second thing I'm going to look at is what are the massive opportunities that are created by the changes that are going on in the industry at the moment. And obviously, one of the opportunities that we think is massive, and I know is massive, is land assembly. So we'll look at that. And then what is land assembly and why is it so great? Examples of deals that I've done and that I'm working on now. And I'll also show you an example of a deal that a previous delegate of the course of the workshop that I run has just closed, just to give you an idea of how quickly you can get on board and how quickly you can start making money from this. And then finally, at the end, we'll look at how you can book the course. And hopefully at that point, I might be able to hand over to Mark, but if not, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so first of all, who am I? My name's Graham Stewart, as you've seen. I'm 44 years old and I live in Woking in Berkshire. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from these parts. I'm originally from a town called Dunblane up in Scotland, which unfortunately is infamous now due to the school massacre that happened there quite some time ago. The good thing is it's now also famous for something a bit more upbeat. It's also the home of Andy Murray. So originally from Dunblane, but now living down south. I moved down south in 1995 after I graduated from uni to take a job in the IT industry in sales, and which is quite ironic really because I've got absolutely no interest in IT whatsoever. But it did give me a good grounding in sales, and I made quite a lot of commission from the sales that I made. And I started and I bought my first house with the commission that I earned from that job. Shortly after that, I met my wife, and she also owned a property at the time in Surbiton. So when we got married, we decided that we would sell my house and buy another house, but we would rent her house out, and we remortgaged that house and took some equity out of it, and that's what started us on our property investment journey. And that was back in 2001. And I don't know if any of you were investing in property in 2001. So I've just had some feedback. The slides are not changing. Can you now see a picture of me in the slide? Good to get some feedback. If you can see the picture of me, that'd be really good. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Just catching up. Yeah. So we started. So we had some capital to invest, and back in 2001. If any of you were investing at that time, the market was very, very different. Finance was easy to come by. You could do deals where you literally did not have to put any money in whatsoever. I did one deal up in Glasgow where I bought 6 properties off plan for 90k. By the time they came to complete, they were valued at 120k, and we were able to borrow basically the full purchase price. So the reason I'm telling you this is that not to gloat in any way, but I'm not special whatsoever, but it was very, very easy. The government made it very easy at that time to build up a buy-to-let portfolio because basically Maggie Thatcher had sold off all the council housing, so she was trying to encourage the private rental sector. So anyone could build up a portfolio very, very quickly, and that's what I did. But what it did teach me at that time is that it's very, very important that whatever you're doing in property is something that is helping the government to achieve what their goals are, and I think land assembly certainly does that. So now I'm at a situation where I've still got my property portfolio, and most of those properties are actually up in Scotland, up in Glasgow and Stirling, which is the sort of area that I'm from. But what I realised after a few years of having these properties is that what people outside in the property industry don't tell you is that properties outside the southeast of England really don't appreciate much in value. So one of the reasons that I got into land assembly is that I needed to start building up big lump sums to start paying down the mortgages that I had taken out on these properties. So I actually bought a franchise in 2005, which taught me how to do land assembly, and that's what got me started. And now I divide my time between running my portfolio, doing some land assembly. I typically do 1 or 2 deals a year with land assembly, and I've also got a share in a letting agency with my brother. Okay, I've just changed the slide. Hopefully you'll catch up very shortly. Okay, so what is the current situation in the property industry? I guess the one thing that never changes is that the industry is always changing. Since I've been in the industry since 2001, the only thing that has been constant has been change. But I would say that over the last 18 months, there's been more changes than at any other time throughout that period. The changes that we've had over the last 18 months have been, obviously, we've had the increase in the stamp duty on second homes. We've also had the reduction of mortgage interest rate relief, and we've also had the removal of wear and tear allowance. Now, at times it does feel as though us property investors and buy-to-let landlords are under attack from the government. But I think the thing about change is that we need to understand why the government's made these changes to understand what the opportunities are. Because the thing about change is that there's always opportunities that arise as a result of change, and the people that have the right mindset and also the right knowledge are always in a really good place to benefit from those opportunities. Okay, so why do we think the government has made these changes? Any ideas out there? Get some feedback in the chat box. Not many answers coming back. Is it because they don't like landlords? Potentially. Okay, right. I think what we need to do. So there is the real reason why the government's made all these changes is that there's a massive housing crisis in the UK at the moment. And this is, if you're going to write down one thing tonight, write down the link that's at the bottom of this slide, or if you just Google fix our broken housing market, and you'll come up with the web page. But this is a report that was released by the government in February, just literally about 3 weeks ago. Some of the answers I've had back, Adam, yeah, you're absolutely right. But part of the reason that they have introduced these changes is to help out first-time buyers. But really, the reason they're having to help out first-time buyers is because basically there is a housing crisis. The government and previous governments, in fact, governments for the last 2 decades, just simply haven't built enough houses. And the reason, and basically, what happens when supply doesn't meet demand is that prices go up. So what's happened over the last 2 decades is that prices of both property to buy and to rent have increased massively, and that's having massive social implications. So as a result of that, people are now having to spend so much money on either their rent or their mortgage payments that they've hardly got any money left to spend on other things, and obviously that's holding back economic growth. Other things that are happening is that companies can't attract the best staff because the staff can't afford to go and live near where the companies are based. So these things have a massive implication, not just on the housing market, but on the economy as a whole. So I'm just going to read you some of the quotes from this report that the government released in February. They said, we need to build as many as 275,000 homes a year compared with the 190,000 that they built last year. So just think about that for a minute. That's an additional 85,000 homes a year. In fact, that's a 50% increase pretty much on what they have built previously, which is just an absolutely massive increase. Write this down as well. In the report, it says the government will encourage higher density housing in urban areas and provision of housing around major transport links. So I want you to write down higher density housing in urban areas. The next thing in the report is to limit the pressure on the countryside, as much use should be made of previously developed brownfield land for homes as possible. Better use should be made of land by encouraging high density house building. So again, you hear the words there, brownfield land and high density housing. The other thing that's in this report is that the green belt is sacrosanct, easy for me to say. So just before I sort of move on to that, do you all understand what the green belt is and what the brown belt is? I'll just give you a quick explanation for those of you that don't. The green belt land is land that's protected by the government from development. So examples of green belt land would be parkland, farms, recreation grounds, basically any green fields pretty much in the UK are classed as greenbelt land, and therefore they're protected, which means that we cannot build on them. And part of the Tory manifesto when they got elected was that they will protect the greenbelt. So just write that down as well. The greenbelt cannot be developed and will not be developed. It's also another thing from that report is more action has also been promised to help small independent builders enter the market through the £3 billion home building fund. And then lastly, the thing I'm going to read to you is the government is looking at brownfield land and encouraging increased building densities, pointing out that London was one of the least dense cities in Western Europe. Okay, so hopefully you'll get a flavour there. So coming back to, I explained what greenbelt land was. The other type of land, broadly speaking, is brownfield, what we call brownfield land. Brownfield land effectively is any land that has previously been developed. And when we say previously been developed, that could be, it could either have housing on it, it could have industrial units on it, it could have commercial buildings on it. But basically, brownfield land is anything that has already been developed. So what the government are effectively saying in this report is that they need to build a lot more houses, but they're going to protect the green belt. So the only way they can do this is by building higher density housing on brown belt land. Now, when I talk about higher density housing, essentially what I mean by that is, imagine if you've got an acre of land, higher density housing would be to put as many units, I'm going to say units, as many separate dwellings on that acre as possible. Now, obviously, that's the target, but you have to do that. But at the same time, it has to be in keeping with the surrounding areas. So, I guess the summary from this is that the government's got a massive problem, haven't they? Because essentially, they've got this massive target of housing that they need to build. They reckon they need to build 275,000 homes a year to fix this market, and yet they're also committed to protecting the green belt. So they have really got an issue, and we're going to talk about how we can address that issue in this presentation. But have you all written down that? Just Google "fix our broken housing market," and I would really recommend that if you're in property investment, even if you decide not to do land assembly, you need to read that report, because it's essential reading for any property investor. It is quite lengthy, but it's worth the read. Okay, I'll just give you a bit of time to catch up with the slides. Okay, so I've got a new slide up now. Hopefully you can all see it. So how have we come to this point where we just haven't got enough houses? What are the reasons for it? I mean, you can see from this graph the number of homes that have been built since the year 2001. Now, in 2003, a lady called Kate Barker, who was a member of the Monetary Policy Committee at the time, was asked to write a report on housing, and the outcome of that report was that she recommended that 250,000 new homes had to be built every year for supply to keep up with demand of housing in the UK. And you can see from this graph, hopefully you can see it, that we've never got anywhere near that. Since the year 2001, the maximum number of homes that we've built is about 185,000. So there's been a shortfall of at least 70,000 homes a year since 2001. So you can see that that's going to take. This is not a problem that's going to be fixed in the short term. This is going to take decades to fix. But why are we not building enough houses? There's a few reasons, really. I'll just go into a couple of the major ones. Obviously, the financial crash of 2008 didn't help. I mean, you can see that up until 2006, 2007, we were building more homes. So the financial crash of 2008 didn't help, because obviously a lot of developers went out of business, and also developers were finding it very, very hard to secure finance, so they couldn't build any homes. The second reason, and the main reason, I believe, is that our planning process is just far too complicated, and local councils have got far too much control. Some of you may have heard of the term NIMBY. NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard. And essentially what that means is that everyone knows, I think we all know as a society, that we need to build more homes, but we're all quite selfish and none of us want it to happen in our own backyard. So the problem is that each council is saying, well, yeah, we know we need more homes, but you're not going to do it here. So part of the report that's just been released is the government have said, if local councils don't start building enough homes, then the central government will take away control from that council and start making decisions on their behalf. Okay, and the other thing, a question for you. I mean, are we not building enough homes because we've not got enough land? Is that the issue? A quick question for you. What percentage of the UK land would you classify as being developed at the moment? Quick poll, some answers on that would be really interesting. So, do you think, 50% of the land in the UK has been developed? 25%? 10? What do you think? I've got a 10 there from Chris. Leonard, absolutely on the ball. There is enough land. Only 6% has been developed. You've obviously been doing your research. Well done. No, so yeah, we're getting a few answers in there, which is great. Leonard's absolutely correct, and it does depend on which report you read, but some estimates say that only 6% of the land in the UK has actually been developed, which when I read that figure, I was quite shocked. But actually, if you're ever in a plane coming into land in any of the UK airports and you look down, all you see is green fields, really, isn't it? And likewise, if you drive along any motorway, I frequently drive up to Scotland, so I spend a lot of time on the M6 and the M40. You look left and right, and all you see is green fields. So this is the point, isn't it? That really, it's not a case of land per se; it's a case of brownfield land being available. Because although 94% of land in the UK hasn't got any housing or any developments on it, all of that land pretty much is classified as greenbelt land, so cannot be used. So the answer to the question is, it is a result of not enough land, but to qualify that, it's not enough brownfield land. So to qualify that, what that means is that any brownfield land that we've got, we have to use much, much, much more efficiently. Absolutely, Gareth. So Gareth just said yes, but how much of the remaining 94% of the land is buildable? And the answer to that is pretty much zero. I mean, some greenbelt land is released every year by the government because they have to, but very, very little greenbelt land is released. It's politically a very, very difficult thing to do. Okay, so I guess we've looked at the state of the property market and the changes that are afoot, and I think hopefully when you read that report and from this presentation tonight, you'll see that a large part of the government's housing policy that's laid out in this white paper is addressed by Land Assembly. So just to summarise, the main points in that white paper that you're going to read is that basically we need to utilise brownfield land much more efficiently. So the opportunity is Land Assembly, and that's exactly what we're going to talk to you about tonight. So what is Land Assembly? You'll have heard the quote, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and that really is the case with Land Assembly. In effect, with Land Assembly, we are bringing together multiple either houses or plots of land that on their own have absolutely no development value, but when you bring them together, they have massive value. So in effect, we are creating value from nothing. So when you do that, you make a lot of money, but not only you make money, but the homeowners can make money as well, because the uplift in the value of the land is so great when you bring it together and you get planning permission that everyone can win out of this. I've just had some information from Chris. In England, 78.6% of urban areas is designated as natural rather than built. Since urban only covers a tenth of the country, this means that the proportion of England's landscape which is built on is, sorry, I can't see your image, and the northeast embraced 2.27%. I think the message is pretty clear that the percentage of land in the UK, especially in England, that has been developed is very, very low. But that's because it's all greenbelt land. Okay, so what does this mean for us, Land Assembly? What does it mean in essence? So it's essentially land assembly is the first step in developing properties. So the government's going to be very happy with land assembly because it means that more houses are going to be built on brownfield land. The second people that are going to be really happy is the people that you're buying the land or homes from. Typically, I wouldn't even approach a homeowner or a landowner unless I know or I'm very confident that I can pay them at least 125% of the market value of their property or piece of land. And that is very much the bottom end of the scale. Some deals that you do, you can afford to pay 150, 160% of the value of the land or home. So obviously they're going to be very happy. The homeowner or the landowner is going to be very happy. And thirdly, and most importantly, you're going to make lots of money doing this. And you'll see some of the figures as I go through some of the deals later in the presentation. So just going back to the vendors then, the thing, and this is the real value that you bring into the table here, is that you're only able to pay them 125% or 130 or 140% of the value of the home because you're bringing together their home along with the surrounding homes or pieces of land. So them on their own, that house or piece of land has absolutely no value whatsoever. So because you're bringing a lot of value to this, you deserve to make a lot of money from this as well, and you will do. Okay, next slide. I'll just give you a few seconds to catch up. Hopefully you can see the next slide now. Okay, so what is land assembly? And I think as I show you some of the deals later, it'll become even more clear. But essentially, land assembly is the redevelopment of brownfield land to provide higher density housing. So an example of that would be acquiring two detached homes on fairly large plots next door to each other. You acquire them on an option agreement. You then get planning consent to put 25 flats on that same piece of land, thereby so you demolish the two homes, or you don't, but the developer that buys the land from you would then demolish the two detached homes and replace it with 25 flats. Now, that is a classic case of providing higher density housing. So you're replacing two dwellings using that. In this example, you'd be replacing two dwellings with 25 dwellings, so a net gain of 23 dwellings. It involves bringing together separately owned properties to create the land that has development potential. So this is the whole thing about land assembly, and this is where the value comes. Each piece of land on its own has absolutely no value whatsoever. Now that could be because it's not big enough, i.e. the individual plot isn't big enough, or it could be because of access issues. So that land on its own is locked, is surrounded by other pieces of land, and therefore you can't get access to it. When the land has been secured via an option agreement, we can then gain planning permission for housing. So this is the whole thing about this strategy as well. So as I said at the start, you don't need a huge amount of money to do this because you're acquiring these properties via what we call an option agreement. And typically when you exchange on an option agreement, money does have to change hands to make it legally binding, but it's normally £1, so what we call a consideration, to make it a legally binding contract. So to actually take control of this land, you're paying over literally a few pounds. And that gives you then a period of time, typically a year to 2 years, to then gain the planning consent that you need. And then as and when you get the planning consent, obviously the value of that land goes through the roof, because then the value of the land becomes worth a percentage of what we call the gross development value of that site. So say you're building 25 flats, and those 25 flats, the total value of those 25 flats on sale is, I'm just picking numbers out there, £5 million. Then the land becomes worth a percentage of that £5 million. So that sort of covers the next point. This creates a massive uplift in the value of the land. So the homeowner benefits, the government benefits because you're building more homes. And the great thing about when you help the government is that basically the government makes it easier for you to do these things. So there is things like, if you do decide you want to develop out these properties yourself, they're now starting a fund for small builders to get access to raise finance. They're making the planning process much easier, so that your planning applications will get approved quicker. And then finally, and as I've already said this, but I'm going to keep mentioning this, you only approach owners of properties where we know we can afford to pay well above the market value of their property. So, and one of the things that you'll get on the workshop, that one of the tools that we give you is a tool that enables you to work out exactly how much you can afford to pay each homeowner. And you can do that within minutes. And only if you can afford to pay at least 25% above the market value would you take it to the next stage of the process. So this truly is a win-win strategy. Okay, any questions at this point, or I'm just going to start talking to you about some of the deals that I've done previously. Okay, all right, I'll crack on. So this is a deal that I've done previously. This is quite a few years ago now, and you can see from the diagram at the bottom that there was 3 houses to the left, facing onto the road. Each of those 3 houses had very long back gardens, and the house I guess, let me just, if you can see my mouse, this house here was set to the side of the plot. So we were able to identify that we could get an access road up the side of that house and acquire these 3 back gardens and build 3 detached executive style homes. So we acquired the 3 back gardens and the land to the side via options for 912k. Now, I don't want you to get scared about these figures, because trust me, I didn't have £912,000 available to do this deal. I only needed £3 to exchange on these option agreements. I then gained planning consent for 3 large detached homes, and this is the part of the drawing that we put in for planning permission. And then we sold the site on with planning permission to a developer for £1.15 million. And the thing about that is that we completed on the sale to the developer on the same day that we completed on our purchase with the 3 owners of the homes. So in effect, you get the money in from the developer, you give the money out to the owners of the homes, and you keep the change. So that was a fairly simple deal, only involving 3 homes. And that was one that was closed in probably about 3 months. To show you the other end of the spectrum, this was actually the first deal that I ever did. And to be perfectly honest, knowing what I know now, I probably would never have embarked upon it. But this deal actually involved, in the end, 11 homes. So you can't really see, but along the bottom is a row of either terraced, some of them were terraced houses, or a couple of semi-detached houses. So we all with very long back gardens backing onto a school. So there was no access to the back gardens via the school at the back, obviously, because that's government-owned land. So we approached, initially we didn't approach all 11. We approached the 2 houses that we were going to use for access to see if they were interested. They were interested, so that we then started to approach the houses on either side of them to see if we could acquire their gardens. So the net result was that we agreed to buy a pair of semis on an option agreement, and we also agreed to buy 9 of the surrounding gardens on option agreements. And then the result was that we then put in for planning permission to put an access road in, so demolish the 2 semis that we were buying, use that space to provide an access road in, and then provide 13 townhouses in the back, and you can see that on the screen there. So again, the figures on that one, we made about 300k after fees on that one. But just to kind of stress, this is not a typical deal. The only reason I've shown you this one is it's quite a good kind of visual representation of what land assembly is. It is, because you can see that each garden, looking at number 110 there, for example, that garden on its own, although it's a very long back garden, has absolutely no value because you can't get access to it. But when you bring it all together and you provide an access, it has massive value. Okay, so I've just had a question from Gareth. The option fees of £3 is cool, but how much for the planning permission costs? Very good question, Gareth. and it does vary. It does vary from deal to deal depending on the complexity. To give you an idea, one that I'm working on now, the planning costs on that will be, well, I've budgeted for about 8k. It might well not be enough as much as that, but it does depend on how much information the council asks for and how many reports you have to do, that type of thing. So it's anywhere from sort of 5 to 15k depending on the complexity. But again, that's something that if you haven't got those funds, it's very, very easy to raise those funds, because don't forget, by the point that you're going in for planning permission, you've already secured the land. So if you went to a JV partner and said, look, I've secured this land for 200k, for example, I know that once I get planning permission, it's going to be worth 400k. Are you willing to lend me 15k to get the plan to get the planning permission, and I'll give you X% return? Then you can understand that that's quite an easy conversation to have. So going back to this one, the profit on this one was actually about 300k, but it was an absolute nightmare to bring together this one. So when you come in the workshop, these are not the types of deals we'll be showing you how to do initially. The types of deals I would show you how to do initially typically involve 2, 3, or 4 different homeowners, because any more than that, then it becomes very, very difficult to put it together. Okay, getting quite a few questions in here. A question, Fatima, how much did it cost you to get planning permission? I think I've hopefully answered that one, Fatima. Ali Khan's asked, how do you find these deals? Okay, Ali Khan, that's something that we teach in the workshop, but essentially we use mapping software and other various methods that we would teach you in the workshop. But it's a process that is it's a process that you follow. So it's a process that is very easy to learn. And once I've taught you the process, you'll be able to go away and do it very, very easily yourself. And the thing about the workshop is, and the reason that we've got a workshop rather than a training course, is that during the workshop, you'll actually be working on deals that you find yourself within that workshop. So it's not a case where you're going to come and sit and listen to me talk to you for 2 days. I'm going to show you how to do it, and then you're actually going to do it yourself using the software. And you're going to do it using the software and looking at sites in your own local area. So by the time you leave the workshop, you'll have left with 3 or 4 sites that you're all ready to start working on. Roughly, Chris. Chris has answered roughly and typically £385 per dwelling, excluding architects and consultants and report fees. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying about that. Mushtaq, are the rules the same in Scotland? Absolutely, Mushtaq. The thing about this strategy, and the thing about land assembly, you can do it pretty much anywhere in the UK. Any urban area. Obviously you couldn't do it on the Isle of Arran or somewhere that's very rural, but anywhere that is urban and that has got a need for housing, you can do this. And in fact, I'm from Dunblane, as I said, Mushtaq, and I know of quite a few deals that have been done in Dunblane, and I'm sure, I don't know where you're from, Mushtaq, but if you drive around your town or city in Scotland and once you know what you're looking for, you'll see that this is getting done already. This is not a new thing, by the way. This has been getting done for decades. It's just that people don't talk about it, because it's by the nature of it. If you've got a deal, you tend not to tell anyone about it until you've actually secured it, because you don't want anyone else getting involved. Okay. So Chris is just saying planning application costs £385 per dwelling for England. So Chris, that's the fee to the actual council itself. But obviously you've got the fees on top of that, which are your architect's fees and your planning consultant's fees and all that sort of stuff. If you can make such large sums in these deals, why do you only do 1 or 2 a year? Question from Sam. Okay, so if you can make such large sums in these deals, why do you only do 1 or 2 a year? Very good question, Sam. The answer to that, I guess, is 2 answers really. Partly is I only do this part time, and the reason for that is that you can make big money doing this, but obviously it's not a cash flowing system. It's a system where you'll make big lump sums, as once a year or twice a year, depending on how many deals you do. But So that's one of the reasons. So I only spend maybe sort of 1 to 2 days a week doing this. But secondly, because I'm only doing it 1 to 2 days a week, it's depending on the deal. It's actually the time consuming bit is not finding the sites, because once you've been taught how to find the sites, you'll find sites very easily. The time consuming bit and what takes the time to bring the deals together is that often you're dealing with 3 or 4 vendors, and each of those vendors have got their own circumstances. Life gets in the way. To give you an example, I'm working on a deal. I've just closed a deal in Southeast London, which I had my first meeting with them back in September, and from that meeting, they've been very keen all the way through. But one of the ladies is always away on business. One of the guys he's keen, but he's just not very quick at doing anything. So these things just take time, and unfortunately, if you try and rush people, you can turn them off. So to some extent, you do have to go at the pace that they want to go at. Hopefully that's answered the question, Sam. But yeah, these deals they're quite time consuming, and they do take quite a long time to pull together. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes you can close them very quickly, but sometimes they do take months to string together. Okay, so this is a deal I just mentioned it. Actually, this is a deal that I've just literally closed in the last few weeks. This is a deal in the Sydenham area of London, and it's quite an unusual one in that it's actually a block of flats, block of 4 flats with land to the side, but it's land assembly in the respect that each of the 4 flat owners own a quarter share of the freehold, which includes the land to the side. So I've had to negotiate with all 4 owners, because if any one of those 4 owners decided they didn't want to sell the land, the deal wouldn't happen. And this is the whole point about land assembly. If one party decides they don't want to do it, it doesn't happen, because typically you need all 3 or all 4 or all 2 to do it. So again, just looking at the figures on this one, we've acquired the land for 520k via an option agreement, and because this time the 4 leaseholders there's 4 leaseholders that are directors in the company that owns the freehold. The option agreement is actually with the company that owns the freehold. So it's actually only one agreement. So this time the option fee is only £1. The planning, architecture, and legal fees, I've put that in roughly about 15k. It might not be as much as that. And then the sale price to developer when planning permission is granted will be about 800k. And again, this is something that during the workshop you'll be very, very confident before you even buy the land as to what you'll be able to sell it for, because you'll know exactly. We will teach you how to calculate that. So, assuming this all goes to plan, and assuming that so on this particular one, we've got 2 different options. We're either going to apply for a block of 4 flats, probably 1-bed flats, or if the planners don't like that, then we're going to go for 2 townhouses. But the good thing is that regardless of what we go for, the figures work out very well. And so if we sell this on to a developer, we might decide to develop this one out ourselves. But if we do decide to sell it on, we should make a profit of around about 265k mark. Now, to give you an example, to give you an idea of how everyone wins out of this, so the purchase price of the land is 520k. So each of those flat owners are getting 130k, and the flats themselves are probably valued at 400k. But the value of that flat will not be deteriorated at all by them selling the land to the side, because the land to the side is just almost like wasteland at the moment. So not only are they going to get 130k tax free each, but the value of the property that they actually own will not be depreciated whatsoever in doing this deal. So you can see that this is the thing I like the most about this doing land assembly is that you're having really nice conversations with people all the time, because you really are, although you're making a lot of money out of this, they're making a lot of money out of this as well. And this is the whole point about this. It's one of these strategies where either everyone can make money from it or nobody makes money. So if one of these flat owners, for example, turned around and said, no, sorry, 130k isn't enough, I want 300k, the deal wouldn't happen and no one would make any money out of it. Sam's just asked, why is it tax-free? So when I say that the money is tax-free, this is the money that you pay to the owners of the flats or the houses that you're buying. The reason that that's tax free is that obviously it's classed as their main residence, unless unless they own this as a buy to let property. But if this is their main residence, then this is classed as part of the sale. Because it is their main residence, there's no CGT to pay on it, so it's tax free. So what would the GDV in this one? Heath just said, what would the GDV in this one be? So the GDV on this one would be roughly anywhere between sort of 1.5 and 1.7 million pounds. This is quite the thing is this is London, Sydenham, expensive area. So yeah, it's quite a lucrative deal, that one. But you can see the profit on this one. Although I'm only dealing with 4 vendors, is 265k, whereas the profit on the one that I showed you previously, I was dealing with 11 vendors and I made 300k. But actually, I would rather do a deal like this because the return on time invested is much, much higher on a deal like this. Okay, now I'm now going to tell you about a deal that a previous delegate of the workshop has done. This guy did the workshop in December just gone. And he's been really keen and really proactive, and he's gone out and found a really, really simple, nice site. These are the sorts of sites that I would encourage you all to look at from day one. So this site only involves 3 owners. It's 3 back gardens with direct access off a road. And the purchase price of the land in this case is 500k. So there's 3 owners, and this is quite an unusual one in the respect that we're paying 2 owners 197,500 and 1 owner 105, but in total we're paying 500k. The option fee is £3 because it's 3 different agreements. Planning and architectural and legal fees are 12k approximately, and the sale price to the developer when planning permission is granted on this particular one will be about 700k. Now, again, to put this one in context, the three houses that we're looking at on this particular deal, we're not buying the houses, we're buying the gardens. They've got long back gardens, but the last time one of the houses was sold was just about 6 months ago, and it was sold for 450k. And the owner of that house will be paid 197,500 just for the back garden, and they're still keeping a back garden length which is about 15 metres. Now, if you look at any new build home these days, the typical or average garden length of a new build house is about 10 metres. So 15 metres is still a decent sized garden. So there really is, they're losing some of their back garden, but they've still got a good sized back garden, and they're going to make nearly 200k as a result of doing this. And the profit that this guy will make from it, the guy that's done the course and found this deal, when he sells this on, he would make about 188k. Now, this particular guy is he's in the building trade. He's a sort of project manager in the building trade, so he's actually probably going to try and build these out himself. This particular one, we're probably looking at getting planning permission for two semi-detached houses. Okay, question from Gareth. If the GDV is 1.5 million, how much would the build cost be, and thus the net profit before tax to the developer? I'm not going to get into that level of detail tonight, Gareth. I guess this is the sort of thing that's all taught on the course, but what we teach you on the workshop is that you need to think like the end developer, because ultimately what we're teaching you to do is buy the land below the market value. So the price that you then sell on to a developer is still a price that's enabling him to make typically sort of 15 to 20% margin on the GDV. Well, some of you have lost the sound. Can you hear me again? Chris has said, what length of garden do you target? Again, it's not this. Don't just think this is just gardens. It's not, that's an impossible question to answer, Chris, because it really depends on the site. But there's obviously there's rules that you have to adhere to, and again, that's something you'll be taught on the workshop. Okay, so it sounds like you can all hear me again now, which is good news. But yeah, so this is a deal. Literally, this guy did the course in December. and he's found this deal and already negotiated this deal, and it's now with the solicitors and should exchange in the next few weeks. Okay, so we will have time for questions at the end. Don't worry about that. So if you've got questions, please keep them coming, or you can ask them at the end. But so just to look at the workshop, it's a 2-day workshop. It's a very intense 2 days. It's certainly sort of days where you need to clear your diary, not leave your phone at home, but you won't be looking at your phone. We will teach you a very detailed process, but it's a step-by-step process that will ensure that you not only find sites, but also you qualify in the sites that have a good chance of closing, and that you only spend time on those sites. Because the thing about this strategy is that really what you're investing in the early days is your time. It's not so much money, it's time. So we need to ensure that you're spending your time effectively on the deals that have a realistic chance of making you some good money. So what we'll do is we'll show you how to use the mapping software to find sites in your local area, and it's great software, and it's software that's online, so anyone can use it, and you can use it for anywhere in the UK, and we'll show you how to find the different types of land assembly deals. So there is back garden deals, but there's also deals where you're replacing housing with flats, which are also very, very profitable. We'll give you a deal analyzer tool and show you how to use it. This is a brilliant tool that I've developed over the years, which basically enables me to qualify in or out any deal within minutes. But not only that, it enables you to work out exactly how much you can afford to pay each homeowner, and then still make the required profit that you want to make. We teach you the funnel process. So again, this is all about a very defined process to ensure that you are spending your time on the deals that you need to be spending time on. So any issues with any deal should be uncovered in the early stages, so you don't spend time on deals that will never ever close. So we'll teach you how to contact the owners to maximise your chance of success. Because remember, any of these properties that we're talking about, they're not on the market. So these are properties that you are proactively having to contact to persuade them to sell you their house. But don't forget, you are paying well above the market value. We'll teach you how to negotiate with owners for a win-win solution. We'll teach you the legal process, how the option agreements work. And we'll give you lots of tips to maximise your chance of gaining planning consent. So even before you exchange contracts, we'll give you a number of things that you can do, which will give you a massive amount of confidence that you are actually going to get planning consent. And then another thing is that you'll have access to ongoing mentoring and the option of joint ventures, and be part of a community of like-minded people. The thing about land assembly is that it's quite a lonely profession, in the respect that A, not many people do it, but B, you don't really want to be talking about it to people down at the pub, because the more people you tell, the higher the likelihood of somebody else getting involved. So it's really important that you have a group of people that you can talk to, swap war stories with, that sort of thing. So you become part of a community. I just got a few questions here. Is there a threshold/cost yardstick on the purchase price for each dwelling at which a deal will work? It won't work in dwellings only worth 50k. No, absolutely not, Chris, because it's all relative. The thing about this is it's a formula which will teach you, the formula works anywhere in the UK, because essentially it's based on house prices and what you can build and all that sort of stuff. So obviously land values will be lower in cheaper areas, but then so will the houses be that you're buying. So it's all about the percentage uplift that you can afford to offer. So this can be done anywhere in the UK. Another question from Gareth. If there's free and paid for mapping software that helps us define these potential sites to option and develop, why aren't the bigger boys, development companies, doing it and cut us out for the opportunities? That's a really good question, Gareth, actually, and actually you're right. Because why aren't the big boys doing it? And you'll see that whenever you see these signs on like I showed you at the start, these hoardings that you see outside sites, it always says more land required. The development companies don't employ people like me to go out and find these sites, because it is fairly speculative. they might employ a guy for a year, and he might not bring in any sites whatsoever because you might be unlucky, you might be lazy, you might not be doing it very well. So um, they just don't do it. It's something that and the thing is they're more than happy to pay the market rate for land with planning permission. And if you look at do a quick search on Rightmove for land with planning permission in your local area, and it's like gold dust. So whenever you get it, whenever you have a deal and you've actually got the planning consent, that's the real fun bit because it becomes a bidding war. You'll get 3 or 4 developers that are interested, and more often than not, one of them will pay way above the market price for that site, because if you're in the developer's shoes, they've got staff that they need to be working. So even if they buy a site and they're making less margin than they normally would, they'll buy it because they need to keep their staff working. Is there an additional cost for the ongoing mentoring? This is a question from Pauline. Good question, Pauline, and that's one that I'll hand over to Mark. I guess that's something that we need to discuss. But I guess the whole crux of this is that we want you to be successful, and this is the 2-day workshop's one thing, but I'm also very mindful of the fact that no matter how good the workshop is, when you come out of the workshop, you are going to need some support, and I'm more than happy to do that because I want you to be successful. But there might be an additional cost for that. I don't know how that's structured. You'd need to discuss that with Mark. Okay, I've got some further questions here. I'll just move on. Just very quickly, here's a testimonial. You can read that yourself. This is a guy that did course previously, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet here, but anyone that's done the course has absolutely loved it and found it really, really useful. And I think it does open your eyes to looking at property in a different way. If I'd done this course before I started buying my property portfolio, I wouldn't have bought half of the properties I bought because a lot of the properties I bought were new builds, and I wouldn't buy new builds now. And part of the reason why is you'll find that out on the course. Question from Najma: do planners in most urban areas look upon LA applications favourably? Are there any reasons to avoid for this reason? Are there any areas to avoid for this reason? Najma, the short answer to that is that all councils look upon land applications favourably because they are, in essence, building high density housing in brownfield locations. Now, obviously, every council is different, and some councils, for example, don't like back garden developments. Having said that, where I live, they don't like back garden developments, but they still approve them. That might be on appeal, but the essence of this is that where else are they going to build? There just isn't any. There's not much land out there, so every council is different. But yeah, every council will look favourably upon land assembly applications. Now, obviously, we need to make sure that whatever we're applying for is well designed, is in keeping with the local area, etc., etc. But that's something that your architect is responsible for, and we'll show you how to choose the architect that's going to give you the highest chance of success. Okay, one more question, and I think we'll wind it up for tonight. And any other questions you can direct to Mark and Jackie. So, a question from Hugo: what density of properties per acre/hectare do you work to? Well, Hugo, that's an impossible question to answer because obviously the density of properties per acre will vary massively depending on what you're going to build. If you're building detached houses, then the density per acre will be very low. If you're building retirement flats or a skyscraper, then obviously the density per acre will be very, very high. So it varies per site. But again, that's something that we would show you in the workshop, and we would teach you how to work out what that should be for your particular site. But again, and also that's something your architect will help you with. Najma: I thought the last government in 2009 banned back garden developments. No, that's not the case. What the last Labour government did in 2009, they said is that back garden developments can be refused now because they're not necessarily classed as brownfield land. But all that means is that it gives the council the option to refuse on that basis. But no, back garden developments have certainly not been banned. And if you look around your own local area, I'm sure you'll see lots of back garden developments that are still going on. Okay, quick question from Sam, which is a very apt one. How much does the course cost? So, next slide, last slide, you'll be glad to hear. So, call Property Master Academy to book your place in a workshop, or you can talk to Mark or send him a quick message now. It's a special offer price for the first one, which is £1,200 plus VAT. And the date of the first workshop is the 8th and 9th of April. And the places will be limited to 20. Okay, I think I'm going to wind up now. Mark, I don't know if you can you speak at all or not? No, okay. Excellent. Okay, well, listen, thanks for all your questions. There is more questions coming in, but I'm running out of time, I'm afraid. If you have got any questions that you want to ask, please phone Mark and email them through to him, and he'll forward them on to me, and we can answer those that we can answer. But obviously, the whole point of tonight is just to introduce you to this and to tell you about this workshop that we are going to be doing on the 8th and 9th of April. So hopefully I'll see as many of you on that workshop as possible. Thank you and good night. The phone number, sorry, just before I go, phone number for Property Mastery Academy is 01252 730045. So give them a call or you can email them. Mark, what's your email? Have you got that to hand? Let's get you Mark's. No, just give him a call. I've not got Mark's email to hand. Yeah, sorry, yeah, I have got it. Mark, so MARK at Property Mastery, that's master with a Y in the end, academy.co.uk. I'll just put that. In fact, Mark's put it on the chat, so you should be able to see that. Okay. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for your time. Hope you found it useful, and good night. And I'll hopefully see you on the 8th of April.